Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We are in our calendar in the period that's referred to in Hebrew as Bein HaMetzarim, in the Straits. These are the 9 days that precede the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, Tisha B'Av, which will start next Saturday night. At this point in our historical memory, the Romans have already breached the walls of Jerusalem, and they are laying siege to our holy city. Building by building, they're going, demolishing and burning, making their way inexorably toward the Temple Mount, where they will ultimately demolish the house of God. The rabbis in the Talmud ask the question of how it happened. How did we come to be in this situation where the Romans could enter the most sacred city in the world and the most sacred precinct in the most sacred city in the world and level it and burn it? They offer a story in the Talmud about how we got there. The story is that we got there step by step. Here's the story. There once was a rich man who hosted a party for all the dignitaries of Jerusalem. He lived in the first years of the Common Era. He was wealthy and powerful and connected. This rich man sent out a servant with invitations to go to all of his friends to come and join him at the celebration. But there was a mix-up. The servant was sent to get the man's friend Kamsa. But instead he went to another guy with a similar sounding name, Bar Kamsa. Kamsa was a friend of the host. Bar Kamsa, though, was his mortal enemy. And so the invitation got misdelivered, and so Bar Kamsa received an invitation to the home of his sworn foe. And Bar Kamsa shows up at this party and sits and eats and drinks with everybody else until the host notices him there and strides up to him and takes him by the scruff of his neck, lifts him up bodily from his seat at the table and says, "Get out, you don't belong here." And Bar Kamsa says, "Please let me stay, I'll pay for everything I eat." And the host says, "No, get out." And Bar Kamsa says, "I'll pay for half the party, just let me stay, don't humiliate me like this." And the host says, "Get out." And Bar Kamsa says, "I will pay for the entire party, just leave me be." And the host lifts him up and throws him out the door and locks the door behind him. Bar Kamsa gets up in the dusty street and he swears revenge. But not actually at the host for his impoliteness, but at the rabbis and the leaders of Jerusalem who did nothing to stop his shaming. He says, "They sat quietly as I was cast out, therefore I will make each and every one of them suffer." And Bar Kamsa hatches a plan. He goes to Rome and goes to the Caesar and says to the emperor, "The Jews are rebelling against you." And Caesar says, "How do you know?" And Bar Kamsa says, "I propose a test. Send me back with a calf and see if they will sacrifice it at their altar. If they accept it, you will know that they remain loyal to you, O Caesar. But if they reject it, you will know that they're in rebellion." Caesar says this is pretty smart, and so he sends Bar Kamsa back with a calf. And as Bar Kamsa is making his way back from Rome to Israel with this calf, he pulls out a short knife and he slashes the calf's face, leaving it scarred and bloody, and therefore unfit to be offered on the altar of God. Bar Kamsa brings back this calf and presents it to the rabbis and says, "Will you offer this scarred calf?" And the majority of the rabbis say, "We need to preserve peace at all costs. So what? We'll offer one unfit offering on our altar and live to offer more another day." But one rabbi, Rabbi Zechariah ben Abkulus, says, if we offer this blemished calf, people will say that we no longer care about God, that we no longer care about giving God only the best. And the Talmud goes on to say, it is because of the rigidity of Rabbi Zechariah ben Abkulus that our city was burned, that our temple was burned. How did we get to this place of destruction? We got there step by step by step. And it occurs to me that at any point along the way, somebody could have stopped it. If the servant had been a bit more attentive to his master's instructions, the invitation would have gone the right place, and we would have been fine. Had Bar Kamsa received an invitation to the home of his sworn enemy and thought to himself, maybe it would be a provocation to show up there. Maybe I'll just stay home. All would have been fine. If the host had seen Bar Kamsa at the party and said, I can't believe he's here, but there are plenty of other people to talk to, and let him be, it would have been fine. If the host had thrown him out, but had thrown him out over the loud shouts of the rabbis and leaders of Jerusalem who were trying to defend Bar Kamsa's honor, maybe Bar Kamsa would have stood up, dusted himself off, gone home and poured himself a double scotch and said, that was one bad night. If Bar Kamsa had been able to contain his anger and not allow his anger to turn into a need for revenge, if Rabbi Zechariah had been willing to bend just this once, if the rabbis had been willing to stand up to him and say, we are the majority and we will not be cowed into doing something against the needs of the Jewish people. If at any point along the way somebody had stepped up and said, no more, the whole tragedy could have been averted. There's a phrase in Hebrew, ad kan. Ad kan means up till here, but no further. If at any point along the way somebody had said, ad kan, he's at the party, but I don't need to make a big deal of it. We've had this fight for years. He could stop here tonight. He threw me out. He's a total jerk. Thank God I have other friends. I don't need to do anything about this. This one time we're being asked to break the rules. I know it doesn't look good, but just this one time. If at any point, along the way, anybody had the courage to say, up till this point, but this doesn't actually need to go any further, this doesn't need to snowball any bigger, tragedy could have been averted. Tisha B'Av, in a lot of ways, is the kickoff to the high holidays. 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av, we get to Rosh Hashanah. And I think that one of the key words of the high holiday season for us should be ad kan. Up till this point, but no further. What can stop with me? What can stop right now? What can I refuse to perpetuate or be part of 1 second more? And ad kan has this paradoxical power because in some ways you do ad kan by refraining. By saying, I am not going to take the bait. I am not going to reply to the nasty message. I am not going to continue the fight. I'm going to let this cycle die with me. In some ways, ad kan is about holding back. And in some ways, ad kan is about stepping forward. I have been silent too long, and up till this point, and not 1 inch further. I have restrained my voice when my voice needs to be heard. I have held back when I knew things were broken. I won't have it anymore. Ad kan, to hear and no more. It can mean choosing not to respond. It can mean getting to our feet and finally responding. If I had a single favorite line from the whole of the Jewish tradition. If I someday have a sanctuary that I get to help design and I get to pick what verse goes on the wall, it's a line that comes from Pirkei Avot, "B'makom she'ein anashim hishtadel lihyot ish." In a place where there is no humanity, try to be a person. That's it. In a place where there is no humanity, where nobody is behaving as a human being should, where are we supposed to be? We are supposed to be grown-ups. We are supposed to be people. We are supposed to be mentioned in the full sense of what that means. Sometimes that means not responding. Sometimes being a grown-up means not taking the bait, not perpetuating the fight, not jumping in the middle of the fray. Sometimes being a human being means looking around and seeing that everybody else is letting something slide, but not you, not anymore, not today. As we head into the High Holy Day season, I invite us to think about, and I invite myself in public to think about, what are the things to which we need to say Ad Kan this year? What cycle are we ready to break? What silence are we ready to break? How do we stand up and keep the snowball from growing bigger and bigger and bigger? How do we keep ourselves from destruction, preventable every step of the way? It has been a great honor this year to step into this pulpit, get a chance to share Torah with this community. This community remains and will always be family for me and a home for me. I hope we have many, many more occasions to learn together. Shabbat shalom.